This video is brought to you by my supporters on Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, and YouTube. If you'd like to support me, you can find the links below.
The forces of Hindutva are trying to take us back to the medieval times, trying to thrust Manavad upon us, and that should be resisted in every way possible.
What was the reason that pushed you into doing this activism?
That was the sacrifice of a little girl at Gulbarga. She was flayed, and the flaying was for that the mantrik thought that if you sit on the skin of an innocent child, you can visualize treasure, nidhi. And when I get off the bus at Pune, Narendra Dabolkar comes to pick me up and says, come, let's go. I'll take you to your room. I said, Narendra Dabolkar, you are supposed to be on hit list. There are supposed to be police guarding you. Where are they? He said, no, yaar. I said, why? Where are they? He said, if I take police protection, they'll kill somebody else. Better they kill me. That was his attitude.
This is the podcast with Narendra Nayak, who is a prolific figure in the field of rationalism. He's been trying to move the country in the direction of rational thinking since the 1970s. It was an absolute honor to have him on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Pranav. You're watching the Science is Dope podcast. Enjoy. Welcome everyone to episode 4 of the Science is Dope podcast. We are in Mangalore today and my guest is none other than Narendra Nayak, who is probably the biggest, the most well-known rationalist in India. He's been debunking supernatural claims and claims of pseudoscience and claims by Godman for years, for decades, since before I was born. And so I call him the James Randi of India. And it's a real honor to have him on the show. Sir, welcome.
Thank you for all those kind things that you said.
Sir, the first thing I want to ask you was, the last time we met, you told me about a story of how you were a young boy and you were discussing this concept of existence of God with your mother and your mother's response to that.
Yeah.
Can you retell that story?
The thing was that even as a kid, I used to ask a lot of questions, explore a lot of things. And I think I should say I came to the conclusion that there is no God by a series of very ill-designed experiments, if I look in retrospect, because they were based on certain observations to certain responses to certain prayers to a non-existent God. Because I was educated in a school of nuns, what we call as the convent schools. And there they had a prayer for every damn thing. Morning you get up, one prayer. As soon as you sit for breakfast, one prayer. Blah, 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 blah. It goes on and on and on. And it was to a god, something called as Devaru in Kannada. And this Devaru was supposed to be an all-powerful entity. And one of my first experiments was with the examination system. My mother used to tell me to pray to God, particularly when I was going to write exams. And I used to do that. And then one day I thought, why not I just stand and not pray? I just stood and did not pray and went and wrote the exams. I got good marks. So I got the confidence that one need not pray. Then, when the next exams came, I thought, let me try the negative part of it. So I prayed to God and said, Devare, fail me in this exam. And yet I got good marks. So when the next exam came and my mother said, pray to God, I said, no. She said, why? I said, there is no God, it's all nonsense. You know what my mother said? She said, my son, you have seen this at such a young age. You have come to know of this? I think my mother was a closet atheist even at that time. Of course, when she passed away in 1995, long before she passed away, she had become a total declared practicing atheist. So And when we were children, born in an Orthodox family and in a community of Gauda Saraswat Brahmins, I don't think she would have had the courage to openly declare her atheism or even allow her children to declare openly their atheism. But we never had any problems with any godly rituals at home, except there were some photographs around to whom we used to pray, and I used to think that it is a photograph of a god. Somebody went to heaven and photographed it and brought it for the sake of everybody. Then finally I came to know it was Shirdi Sai Baba's photo. So that was my first experiment. Then again, my father, we are one of the richest families of Mangalore. We were, I should say. And my father squandered away everything. He was doing nonsense. Even when I was 8 or 10-year-old child, I could sense that what was happening. And I used to pray to this God to set right everything. And by next morning, very short deadline, I should say, for a God. And when I woke up the next morning, things were just as they were. So that was another reason how I came to that conclusion. When I was a child, I was a bit sickly, suffering from asthma, and then I should say maybe malnourished too. And we were given certain rituals also. For example, what's called as feeding the Dalits. On a Amavasya day, the Dalit would be called. It was usually a Dalit woman with children, and a huge heap of rice would be put in front of her, cooked rice, and curry would be poured on that, and then she will be asked to eat, and then coconut oil will be poured on her head. And this was supposed to ward off any ill luck that was supposed to come to me. And I asked my mother, what will happen to that? She said it will go to her. I said, in my case, I'm just a child. But she has got 3 children. What will happen to them if something happens to her? My mother said, no, don't talk about that. So probably it was a bit of confusion in her mind too, that follow certain rituals. But I do not know, I did not have too much of a religious influence at our house. No pujas would be gone. In fact, no priest has ever entered our house to date.
I think very often these religious influences kind of mix with social scenarios like what you mentioned, and very often privilege plays a big role in religious influence also. So I think that should be spoken about a little more. From what you mentioned, this is as a child. How old were you when you came to all this?
I think I was all of 11 years when I came to a conclusion, and I announced grandly that there is no God.
So I think even for me, the experience was somewhat similar. As a child, we tend to believe everything we're told, and when our parents, and again, it's no fault of theirs, they were probably told by their parents, and when our parents tell us that, hey, this is God and this is how you pray to him, we just, as children, we tend to believe it blindly, and to actually conclude these things at that age, I think it's a feat for sure. So you were working as a professor of biochemistry.
Yeah.
And what made you want to leave that job and get into activism and rationalism?
See, it was a scheme planned decades back. In fact, in 1976, when I passed my post-graduation in biochemistry from Kasturba Medical College, Manipal, I had decided that after retiring from myself, because with this degree, the only openings were either a academic pursuit or working in a clinical laboratory or research. And all of these would be service under a authority or an institution. What I had planned for was that I will retire after reaching the age of retirement. I'll devote all my time for the cause. So it was very well planned, even in 1976 when I joined the movement. But only thing is, the plan came into operation much earlier than what I had planned for.
So, what was the reason that pushed you into doing this activism?
The reason was that I should do something for the society in which I am born, the society to which I owe everything. See, we are educated at the cost of the society. We are educated by the people. Even if you are studying in a capitation fee institution, remember that it is the people who are paying for your education. It's not the management. Management is only profiting. That's all. It's skimming off the profits. So it is your duty to repay this debt to the society which has made you what you are. And I'm just repaying that debt. As for my quitting my job a bit earlier, that was because of an incident which deeply disturbed me a bit. But anyway, I had planned for it. But this was, I could say, the last straw. That's all. That was the sacrifice of a little girl at Gulbarga. That was in 2004.
Okay.
She was flayed, mind you. And the flaying was for that the mantrik thought that if you sit on the skin of an innocent child, you can visualize treasure, nidhi. That's why they kidnapped the girl.
You can visualize?
Treasure,
Oh.
hidden treasure, buried treasure.
My God.
You know, that is in Nizam, Karnataka, and there are always stories there that somebody buried their treasure and things like that. So they thought they could visualize that by sitting on an innocent child's skin. So that was the reason why they kidnapped her, starved her, and then killed her. I think they smothered her and then flayed. It deeply disturbed me, I should say. And I quit.
How did you learn about this
In
incident?
the papers. And as it was not that I entered the movement at that point. I was working for the movement from years, from decades. From 1976 onward, I've been working for the movement, off and on, off and on. And sometimes a particular set of things will be on the front burner, others will be on the back burner. For me, in the 80s decades, it was the consumer movement that was on the front burner. And I was a director of the Karnataka Consumer Protection Board for 2 terms. I was on the committee that drafted the Consumer Protection Act for this country. I was running a periodical for consumer affairs for 10 years, a monthly periodical, because newspapers were not publishing these issues. But this was also going parallelly, because whatever movements that I've taken up are very scientific, rational and logical in that approach. Consumer movement is also one such. Rationalist movement is also one such. People science movement also is in the same direction. So whatever I worked for is going by reason and logic.
Okay. And why? So I want your opinion on this. Why is rational thinking important?
Simply that you take your decisions in your life based on evidence. As simple as that. And not on hearsay. A very simple fact that you should observe in your life. And put everything to the test of reason before you accept it. This is what Gautam Buddha said 2500 years back. It's nothing new for us.
And who are the people in the movement, in the rationalism movement, who influenced you the most?
First was Abraham Kovoor. See, I was an atheist at the age of 11, but I should say I was not a rationalist. Because rationalism is a state of mind which would like to put things to test of reason before acceptance. Atheism is just a conclusion that there are no supernatural powers. In 1976, 75-76, that was the time of the emergency. The newspapers were subject to pre-censorship. So not much news would get through. So at that time they caught this topic of scientific temper, questioning the godmen. And that was the only controversial topic they could take up. So we got a lot of publicity in that time. And Abraham Kovoor had come to India for what they called as the divine miracle exposure campaigns. And
When was this? Which year?
1975.
Okay.
I think in 1976. It was 1976 November, I should say. I think 23rd of November or so. His program was organized at Mangalore. And to organize this program, we communicated to the Indian Rationalist Association, saying that the practice was that Kovoor would come to India. He would take the flight from Colombo to Madras, and then from Madras he would travel around the country, and then go back from Colombo to Madras. Madras to Colombo. And for this particular trip, the expenses had to be shared by all the people who wanted to have his programs in India. And they would be fixed well in advance. So we wanted one at Mangalore. So we communicated to the Indian Rationalist Association saying that we want one. They said we cannot give programs for individuals. You have to have an organization. So we started at that time what we called as the South Canara Rationalist Association, and we sent our contribution, and then a date was given to us. And the rule was that those who are organizing the program have to go to the venue of the previous program, pick them up, bring them to the venue of the program, and then from that the organizers of the next program would take them. Okay. So it was that way. So I went to Kannur to pick him up. I spent that day with him, watching the programs, talking to him, and then we brought him to Mangalore. So that was the time when I got to come to know him personally. The program was a huge success, and then the Dakshina Kannada Rationalist Association, which had come into existence, started working also. That was in 1976.
So, before you met Abraham Kovoor, actually, you know what? Let's, for the audience, let's talk about who Abraham Kovoor was.
Abraham Kovoor was a rationalist from Sri Lanka who was actually born in Kerala. He was a botanist. He was a lecturer in botany in one of the colleges at Sri Lanka, I don't know its name, in Colombo.
Okay.
And there he had started the Sri Lanka Rationalist Association. And he had become famous by his challenges to godmen and what they call as the Divine Miracle Exposure Program. So he used to come to India from Sri Lanka and give these programs and go back. Okay. He was the most visible face of the movement as of that time.
So what made you want to bring him to Mangalore?
Because his challenges to godmen and his team, which would do all the so-called godmen miracles and then explain them to the people. The explanation was not much. There was the magician who would do all those things and say, they can do it. They say it's because of a divine power. I say anyone can do it. That was all his explanation.
I remember I've read one of his books on
Godmen.
On Godman. And my video, if you haven't seen my video on Godman, how to be a Godman, it was a satirical video. It was mainly inspired by this book, and he spoke a lot about how most of these tricks, most of these miracles by Godman were just tricks of
most, no,
all.
Yeah. You have to be specific.
Sleight of hand tricks that magicians could do, but they could do it without claiming it was divine, supernatural, or anything. But these godmen would.
I think there's a slight amendment there.
Okay.
Since I'm a specialist in the field, I have to tell you, it's not just sleight of hand. There are miracles using chemicals. There are miracles using special apparatus. There are miracles using only mental suggestion. Every miracle has got an element of mental suggestion, but there are some which have only mental suggestion in them. And a lot of cold reading. So there are quite a few things there using the human body. So
Okay.
it's not just one class, sleight of
You're,
hand.
yep, yep. I think it's the same thing that astrologers do
Yeah.
sometimes, right? They do a lot of code reading, and people believe that whatever they're saying is because of
Yeah.
their divine.
And they do
What-
not even understand that they are giving the clues themselves.
Yeah, that's right.
And
Yep.
many of the clues are already given to them before they reach the place.
Yeah. So there was an anti-superstition bill that you were working on getting it passed and all. What can you tell me the story of that bill and what's its status today?
That was the brainchild of Narendra Dabolkar. From decades he has been working towards it. It's not an anti-superstition bill, amendment please. It's an anti-black magic and inhuman practices. Superstitions cannot be eradicated by any legislation because believing in something is your constitutional right. Superstitions can be eradicated only by education. And so, with that amendment, let's go on with it.
Yeah.
The most inhuman of the practices come under this. And as it is, which are brought under this, most of them were already covered by the IPC or CRPC and things like that. But they have been consolidated into another act, adding to the myriad of acts that are already there, one more. That's all. This was passed in Maharashtra by Narendra Dabolkar, I think quite some time back. Even a decade before he was killed. He had got that bill passed in the Legislative Assembly, but it was blocked in the Council. And he was working to get it passed in the Council by introducing amendments here and there. And he did not succeed in that. Only after he was killed, it was made into a law by an ordinance. And on the next day of that, we had a protest meeting outside Banshankari, that complex, where we were having a national level workshop at that time. Because my huge ambition was to have 2 activists to demystify these miracles in every district of the country. And I submitted a huge project for that, costing nearly 3.5 crores. And it was passed also. In the first step in that would be a national level master resource person workshop, and that was happening at Bangalore when this happened. And then we had a protest meeting. In that I put forward a proposal that one such act should be brought for Karnataka also. And Gauri seconded me at that time. That got a lot of publicity, and then a lot of other people stepped into it. 2 separate drafts were made. One by the National School of Law, other by the Karnataka State Law University. One was released in Bangalore, the other was released in Dharwad the next day. And for the release in Bangalore, Kalburgi and I were on the same platform. Of course, there's a committee for that, and a lot of others were there. They all drafted it. And it was a good draft. But it cannot be called an anti-superstition bill.
Got it.
It's taking some of the most inhuman of the practices, some 10 of them, and making them punishable offences and having a mechanism for redressal also. But nothing has happened in that. That bill itself got passed after a lot of controversy. In fact, that bill was proposed. Then the Lok Sabha elections came of 2000, I think it was in 2019, the previous one. The 2014 one.
Okay.
And when that came, these people put it on the back burner. And nothing happened. Because these Hindutva wadis started saying, even your Tulsi plant will be called as a superstition and that will be banned and things like that. So I think Siddaramaiah put it on the back burner. And then, anyway, his government was there in power and it was going on. Later on, Kalburgi was killed. And at that time we had a big meeting in Freedom Park in which we said this bill should be passed. And I was one of the speakers. There was this Asia TV based at Singapore which was shooting me. They were making a documentary about me and they wanted a wanted footage of me speaking to a large audience, and here there was a large audience. I was on the stage. I was not asked to speak at all. Then I was saying they want to shoot. I told the organizer, it was in Niduma Medium at Swami. Told him they want to shoot. So why don't he said? Then suddenly he said, come, you have to speak now. And when was that? When two ministers were coming. I think they wanted me to give them a bit of my mind. So I said, Narendra Dabolkar was killed. We asked for this law at that time, and then Kalburgi has been killed now, and now we are again asking for its implementation. How many more of us do you want to die before you make this into a law? And ironically, that happened in 2017 November, after Gauri Lankesh was killed. So it was, I don't know, somehow it was all the people who are connected with this law who were targeted. Narendra Dabolkar was targeted, Gauri Lankesh was targeted, and Pansare was targeted. Kalburgi and I were on the same platform passing this. Then he went to Dharwad, I went to Gulbarga the next day. So I didn't go for the Dharwad one. He was also finished off. Then there was a hit list in which Girish Karnad, who had taken the leadership in going to Siddaramaya and asking for the passing of this act, he was also targeted. I was also targeted. Bhagwan, and then after when Gauri Lankesh was killed, a list came of 20 people. My name was not on that. I was happy, thinking, oh, I am out of the list. But that was only a waiting list. There was a confirmed list of 4 people. And in that, Girish Karnad, Bhagwan, yours truly, and Niduma Mediamat Swami, we were the 4 people on that. They had even assigned who was to kill whom. The same man who killed Gauri Lankesh was supposed to finish me off. Anyway, that is the story of this act, which was passed, but is in cold storage now. Yediyurappa, when he became chief minister, after dislodging the coalition government, he made some noises about superstitions and bringing this, implementing this act, but nothing happened. Now that Siddaramaya has come back to power, hope he will do that.
So this bill is mainly in the state level, is in Karnataka level.
We want a central bill to be passed. But I do not know whether it will be with governments like this.
So you spoke about Gauri Lankesh, Kalburgi, Dabolkar also, and how they were targeted. What, in your opinion, is the state of rationalism in India? The safety of rationalists?
I do not know. Narendra Dabolkar was careless. I think it was in 2012 or 10, I do not remember.
13, I think.
No. That he was killed on the August 20th.
Okay.
That we know very well that date.
Okay.
When I had been to Pune for the 20th year of Maharashtra Andhashraddha Nirmulan Samiti or something, I was one of the chief guests.
Okay.
And when I get off the bus at Pune, Narendra Dabolkar comes to pick me up and says, come, let's go. I'll take you to your room. I said, Narendra Dabolkar, you are supposed to be on hit list. There are supposed to be police guarding you. Where are they? He said, no, yaar. I said, why? Where are they? He said, if I take police protection, they'll kill somebody else. Better they kill me. That was his attitude. And when police protection was proposed for me in 2016 June, the first thing that the commissioner of police who had called me said, do not refuse. So that's why I did not refuse. And probably that's why I'm probably alive today.
Was police protection given for Kalburgi and...
Yes. Kalburgi also refused it. Gauri, I don't know what was her attitude, but in 2017 March, when an attempt was made on me, she calls me, and that was widely publicized on TV and all, even the national media. Gauri calls me and says, Jagdatan Rapa, why are you doing like this? She's telling me. I told her, what about you, Gauri? She said, Adalla namgal ragal Rapa, she said. I don't know what is the meaning of those words. But on the 5th of September 2017, Gauri is killed.
also the attempt made on you. Can you talk about what exactly they tried doing?
No, they tried to get me when I was going from the my home to swimming pool. That time I had only a bodyguard during the daytime who used to see me home at 7:30 in the evening, tell me, sir, don't come out. I'll come tomorrow at 9 o'clock.
Hmm.
And what I used to think swimming pool is just 200 meters from my house. So early morning I would just pop down to the swimming pool, finish my swim and come back.
Hmm.
And I thought nobody will know. But at that time they tried to get me.
Hmm.
Somebody came by a bullet and said no air in the tire. Luckily I didn't stop. If I had stopped I wouldn't have been here today. I escaped that day. But I do not think that was a part of the organized effort to eliminate me. That was some local level thing. Till date, they have not found out who it was. I didn't stop. I straight away went. Otherwise, they would have finished me. But I think they were with a sword or something like that.
So you were in your car, and they said this. They tried to stop you, and
Yeah.
okay.
They said there is no air in the tire. Tire ali gali illa, they pointed out. The man sitting in the front. I didn't stop.
Okay.
I straight away passed. That was at the end of the road from my house where it joins the main road. I was to turn to the right.
And later, how did you confirm this was an attempt to?
Because I went to the petrol bunk and checked.
Okay, and there was that.
the attender said, "Sir, go. What happened early morning? You come." I said, "Check the air." He said, "Oh, it's perfectly normal." I said, "No. Somebody said it's not there." He said, "No. Let me check if you want, but it's perfectly normal." Then they checked; it was perfectly all right. Then I understood that this was the attempt. And there were two people, one fat fellow sitting in the front and a thin fellow at the back. Probably they had a sword in between them. I was even given the name of the person because the local rowdies know him. But the police didn't do much to catch him.
So if such list came out, such the names of the people who were to carry out all this came out, isn't that enough of an evidence or enough of a lead for the police to take action?
We don't know. I just don't bother about these things because I have had so many threats. FIRs have been made, NCs have been made, and then when Gauri Lankesh investigation was going on, they found that I was followed for 3 or 4 days. That was the time when this hit list came out of 4 people who were on the immediate hit list, confirmed tickets.
And what is the status of those investigations now?
I know that Gauri Lankesh case is still going on. It is a part of that.
And the Kalburgi case and the
They're all
Dabolkar.
linked. The same gang has been trying to do it. That's what they're saying now.
And along the same line of questions, what do you feel about the current government that is in power?
The current government in power wants to be in power, as simple as that. So they'll take all steps to keep themselves in power. So probably now their first thing is to make a good show in the Lok Sabha elections, which are around the corner, 2024 elections. Maybe after that it will be to cling on to power. It will go on like that.
So, would you agree with the statement that they're using religion as a tool for votes?
Yeah, sure.
And
Everyone.
that is the main reason why they're maybe against this bill or against the people who are pursuing this bill.
No, the other group is waiting to pounce on these people and spread disinformation and lies.
The other group, as in?
I mean, the Hindutva guys, who else? They will be waiting for some progressive move to be made and then they will add embellishments to that, dress it with a lot of sauce and sugar and salt and say that if you just say you will ban this, they will say you are going to ban everything. They'll ban the tika, they'll ban the tilak, they'll ban your sacred thread. Like that, they'll spread stories. And our gullible people, all students of the WhatsApp University and Facebook College will believe such stories.
So, can you tell us any incident or any interesting experiences from any debunking of Godman or claims that happened?
You should specify them because there are
Any
so
any
many,
interesting incident?
so many of them. They're
I
huge.
remember
Of
you
people
told.
running away from challenges. Most of the time, there's people running away from challenges.
What sort of challenges are usually given?
No, we give them some foolproof tests. Say for astrologers to predict the results of an election or of an outcome of a future event, things like that, or read the number of a seal currency note,
Mm,
or see with a real blindfold, because
mm,
people make all sorts of
mm,
claims, and generally we debunk the claims by performing that ourselves, or by showing that it doesn't work. For example, when Ramdev said about tulsi leaves, immediately we did an experiment and showed that they don't stop radiation.
I've seen that.
Yeah,
He tries to raise
yeah,
the
yeah,
arm.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Like somebody with a coconut shows that they can show water. The psychomotor movements. We immediately make a counter video. Some sannyasi makes a video saying that he can decolorize whiskey by his mantram. So we do that. Not one, there are hundreds of such incidents
Or
which we do.
starting a fire.
Yeah, just staring at the thing.
Yeah.
Baking a coconut in the Yajna Kunda and the fire starts. Walking on fire, keeping camphor on the tongue. Oh, it's a huge list of these things. A huge list of the exposure that we have made of the so-called spiritual phenomenon and things like that.
And if they are successful in this challenge, what would be their
I
reward?
started with a small amount, but now I am put all my property on the line. But on the other hand, in order to dissuade non-serious contestants, I've kept a deposit also. I said deposit 1% of the money that you would want, and you will forfeit it if you can't do it.
Got it. Got it.
And nobody has done that so far, not a single person. Even in our most famous exposure of that midbrain activation, where I promised 5 lakhs, 25,000 was to be kept as deposit. And that Vinod Surendran, he just disappeared 2 days before the test was to be done at Calicut. Remember that famous video? It has got nearly 5 lakh hits.
Yeah. I think if you search midbrain activation on YouTube, your video
My
is
video
the
comes up first. That's why they changed the name of that scam.
Yeah.
They are calling it brain balancing, right brain balancing.
Yeah, brain optimization.
Yeah, all sorts of new names they have discovered.
Yeah. And what was your reaction? It came on TV on Kaun Banega Crorepati and even in Shark
where
Tank.
we got it withdrawn. And Shark Tank people said we have no the set, I think, Sony Entertainment Television Network, for the Shark Tank, they said we have no control over the content done by our people. I didn't bother too much.
So most of this superstition and pseudoscience ideas come from religious or faith-based thinking. That's very common among people, and when you combine that with science illiteracy, they can easily be fooled with.
That's what is happening in that midbrain activation. Now they are calling it as Gandhari Vidya. Then one Daji, Kamlesh Patel, has brought it into his some insight, some stupid thing. The double Mr. Ravi Shankar, he is calling it some other fancy name. So they'll mix religion into that, and then they'll call it as meditation or pranayama or yoga or something like that. Anything stupid
because
like this you want people to believe in, give it some name as ancient Indian technique or yoga or pranayama or something like that.
whenever there's any religion or religious myth associated with any of these, that's like instant validation in the eyes of common people.
Yeah, common people, and particularly in the Hindutva-wadi political gang, they jump to the support of such people, saying that it's an attack on Hinduism. I tell them it is the Hindus who are being exploited by them.
Yeah.
Why are you saying it's an attack on Hinduism? It is the Hindu kids who are being made a fool of.
Yeah. And sir, so this midbrain activation thing is independent of religion. They're trying
No,
to
it started independently of
of religion.
religion with a pseudoscience, and when the pseudoscience got exposed, they started bringing this meditation and pranayama and things like that into it.
See, the way midbrain activation, those workshops happen is they get a child to demonstrate how they can perform these feats of maybe
Yeah.
reading or seeing something, seeing
Yeah.
the color or identifying something with a blindfold.
Yeah.
So, are these children told to lie?
Yeah, they are. They are told to lie. They are also threatened that if they expose that thing, they'll turn blind. That's why they pick on children, the younger ones in particular. Not too young, not too old. The showpieces of children whom they show around are around the age of 8 to 12.
That is the age when you question, you believe elders without question.
Yeah.
And sometimes the elders may not be aware that they're cheating the children, but in cases like these,
Maybe not. Because it's a question of peer pressure. Once Pinky does it, Rinky also wants to do it.
got it.
When Ram does it, Kishan also wants to do it. And he wants to become the cynosure of all eyes. So he goes and tells his papa. And then the papa asks the other boy's papa. And then he says, I can take you to that place. And then they introduce them to that. And then this boy also starts reading in parties and in family gatherings and all.
I'd like to take a small break here and mention that as an independent content creator, my main source of income is my audience. If you'd like to support me through Patreon, Buy Me Coffee, YouTube memberships, or UPI, you can find the links below. This will enable me to travel to different locations and bring you these interesting podcasts with interesting people. And now let's get back to the discussion. Okay, so we've had to move the podcast inside because it was getting sunny and hot out there. And so continuing the conversation, sir, you've been doing this activism for decades now. Do you see any difference in how the country was, how the people were, how the audience was back in those days compared to now?
What happens now is that militant Hindutva guys who otherwise were silent have started asserting themselves. That's all. Previously, they even now they do not have any argument of force. So they have to they do not have the force of argument. That's why they have to try and do the argument of force. That's why gather a mob and start to fight. In fact, I have been attacked in 1992, if going back to that, at Mangalore. And at that time they said, we'll see that you will not have any more programs in Mangalore. The Hindutva guys. I don't know whether it's Bajrang Dal or whether it's one of those senas. But after that, I've had hundreds. Forget one. So these people, they try to cut you short, but we don't allow that. We keep on asserting our voice. We keep on asserting our arguments. We keep on speaking out. I started at the age of, I think I should say 26. And now I am 73 running and I'm still going on. Not stopping.
So, sir, the audience that comes for these workshops, during the workshop, they might agree to all the rational ideas and they might even take in all these ideas. But do you feel they go home and then go back to their old habitual? I'm not saying everyone, I'm saying some people who come to these workshops. What do you feel about it?
See, if you take a general audience, 80% of the people, they'll agree with you. They'll say, very good, very nice. Ye sab hona hi chahiye and all that. 10% of the people are against you. They're just not willing to listen to you. Sometimes they react violently also to what you say. 10% of the people are already there, they already changed, or they've had an inclination, and they remain so. That 80% inside Venus applauds you and claps you and says yes, yes, yes. Once it goes out, they go back to their old ways, many of them. But some change in thinking would have come, some qualitative change. So that's what we are looking at. I know that it's not a revolutionary process, it's an evolutionary process. And we are helping that evolution by putting forward certain arguments before them. And for some people, we are giving them counter arguments to the arguments which other people put to them about these such things. So there's also another tool which we are providing to the people. Then the other thing is openly challenging such people, which nobody wants to do because they don't want to be in bad books of the vested interests. So they'll never challenge. But I do that. So they can always say it's not he is asking. I don't know about it, but he knows. Why don't you do that? So that's another method. And many times people make allegations, allege that you say that you are a rationalist, but what do you do in your life? So for that also we have to be ready. And we are always ready for that. You see, because we get asked questions. For example, in one program in Bihar, somebody asked me, आपको मंत्र में विश्वास है क्या? I said नहीं. तो आपके शादी पे मंत्र क्यों पढ़ाए गए? I said आपको कैसे मालूम हुआ? आप आए थे क्या शादी पे मंत्र देखने के लिए? तो नहीं तो क्या? नहीं थे मंत्र. तो कोई मुल्ला आया था? नहीं. ऐसे कोई पादरी आया था? ऐसे नहीं. तो आपकी शादी ही नहीं हुई? फिर मेरे बीवी से बोल के देख तेरा क्या होगा. एंड देन ही सेड मुझे विश्वास ही नहीं होता कि आपकी शादी हो गई है. अच्छा भाई देखो, बात यह है कि एक कानून है इस देश में जिसमें किसी पंडित मौलवी की ज़रूरत नहीं है. इसको कहते हैं स्पेशल मैरिजेज एक्ट. एंड स्टिल यूर सिंह मुझे भरोसा नहीं होता है. ऐसे अगली बार जब आता हूँ मैरिज सर्टिफिकेट साथ में लेके आऊँगा. दैट वॉज द टाइम व्हेन आवर मोबाइल्स एंड ऑल वर नॉट सो कॉमन एंड पर्टिकुलरली द pictures and all you could not carry around. That was 15 years back. So it's like that. Suddenly in public you get asked questions. And then you have to be ready for it. They will ask you, what did you do? The first question that people put to you is, what did you do? How do you follow it in your life? And for that, many so-called rationalists are not ready for it. They have to make excuses saying that no, my parents wanted it, her parents wanted it, my grandfather wanted it, things like that. I don't have any such excuses. Don't need such excuses, and I've not done any such things in my life too. I've lived a life free of such blame, of being irrational.
So in your opinion, as the years go by, is the country getting more rational or less rational? I mean, the Constitution of India was drafted in such a way that there was no authority or divine power or founder for the country. It's the people who gave ourselves the Constitution. So compared to the rationality and the scientific temper back then, when you see how the country is today, what do you feel?
The forces of Hindutva are trying to take us back to the medieval times, trying to thrust Manavad upon us. And that should be resisted in every way possible. Changing of names, changing of systems of medicine, methods of treatment, recognizing all nonsensical things. These are all steps in that direction. And trying to brainwash children into believing that mythology is history, talking about things happening lakhs of years back when the whole human history is not more than 60,000 years of recorded history. You are saying that lakhs of years ago there were chariots, there were aeroplanes, there were brahmastras and things like that, are all brainwashing the younger generation into believing such nonsense.
There was a recent statement made by the chairman of ISRO,
Yeah.
and it was very close to the Chandrayaan 3 launch, so it got a lot of publicity also. And he said how all the knowledge, all the sciences are from the Vedas. It went to the West through Arabs, and then it came back here as discoveries by those
Yeah.
scientists. And he also mentioned pseudoscience like Vimanas. So, what are your thoughts?
There are two motives there. One is coming up in life. The fellow must be wanting something, promotion, or maybe some post-retirement cushy jobs and things like that. The other part of it is the inferiority complex. The collective inferiority complex wants us to assert our superiority by some means or the other. And as of now, there is no way by which you can do it. You are using WhatsApp, you are using mobile, you are using Windows software, you are using vehicles, you are using everything coming from the so-called Western science. Actually, there's nothing called as Western science, but these people would like to divide it that way. Even for that, they want to claim that the origin is all ours. So it comes from that. That's all. The inferiority complex wants us, and the West will be laughing at us
Yeah.
as usual.
Yeah.
Because they laugh all the way to the bank. Because they are the ones selling us whatever we think is ours.
And what are your thoughts on these scientists who blindly believe these things? Maybe because they were brainwashed in their childhood or whatever, but for whatever reasons you mentioned, they sometimes say things that give validation sometimes to these ideas or maybe to godmen or whoever it is, and those godmen will use the authority of these scientists to market themselves and get more audience, more common
Yeah.
people in their audience.
Yeah,
What are
yeah.
your thoughts?
For example, a fellow like Vijay Bhatkar saying that it's possible to see without light falling on the retina. A man like Deepak Chopra saying it. They're all steps in that direction, talking about such nonsensical things and trying to introduce a credibility among themselves and credibility to others also. Because the common man does not have any answers for these questions. They would go by what some authority says because they're trained, brainwashed in their very childhood to believe in such things. So, this is a tragedy of a nation where we have a 21st century technology superimposed on the 16th century mindset. A 16th century mindset with 16th century technology won't be much of a problem. Because if something happens in Kashmir in the 16th century, if at all it reaches Kanyakumari, it would reach after a year or two. But here it reaches within a few minutes. Using modern technology, using modern science. And this modern science is used to debunk science itself. So that is the dichotomy of it. That is the irony and tragedy of it too.
So, of all the superstitious ideas and all the pseudoscience based ideas that you've seen, which one do you think is the most harmful, or which one annoys you the most?
I cannot single out anything, but see, so many irritating things around. I think astrology is one of the most irritating and nonsensical things of all because it governs every bit of your life. Even to perform a superstitious ritual, a superstitious astrologer has to impose his will on it, saying that it should be done at this particular time. And then these are the worst thugs and exploiters because they will point out some defect and they'll point out the solution for that also. And that solution invariably is of a monetary benefit to the astrologer or his cronies.
Yep.
And it even comes into every bit of pseudoscience, inclusive of things like medicine. For example, administering some gold bhasma, that has to be done during a particular nakshatra. Administering gold itself is stupidity. And doing it in during a particular nakshatra is a double whammy because one superstition and the other superstition.
And sometimes companies or industries take advantage of beliefs, these superstitious beliefs of
Yeah.
people. One example I can point out right now is this idea of Akshaya Thrithiya.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts
The
on?
irony of that is, if you possess something on that day and that's going to multiply like anything, all the jewelers should have been hoarding their stocks and not selling them out because it would multiply like anything because
Yeah,
it's in their possession.
yeah.
But always they've got an excuse for that also. They'll say it doesn't apply to the original owners, those who are owning it on the previous day or
Mm,
something like
mm,
that. Like they say that his medicine does not work on himself because I knew a man who was paralyzed and who was a specialist in treating paralysis, and people are flocking to him. And when I asked them why you are going, they said ಉನ್ಕ ಅವರವರ ಮದ್ದು ಅವರವರಿಗೆ ತಾಗುವುದಿಲ್ಲ ಸ್ವಾಮಿ. That means his medicine does not work on him, it works only
mm,
on others. So that is the way they have excuses
mm,
to wriggle out of
mm,
every single thing.
mm. Sir, what is your opinion on non-evidence based medicine, on pseudoscientific medicine in general, or alternative medicine, as the people call
Alternative
it?
medicine, so called
Yeah, so called.
complementary medicine, all quackery in one form or the other. That's all. There are no double blind studies. The only evidence that is offered is some text in some ancient textbook which could be interpreted any way you like. And they have even cures for things which were not in existence during that time. For example, treatment for
Yeah,
COVID 19, which came into existence only in
yeah.
2019. Even for that, they say our ancient test treatment for it. So when you see things like that, you, you don't know what to say about it.
Mm,
There are many modern lifestyle diseases for which they claim they have the treatment.
mm,
And for everything, they'll say, if not the primary, it will supplement the treatment.
mm,
For example, for cancer, supplementary treatment. What is that?
mm,
We don't know. And no oncologist will ever prescribe that.
yeah.
For that, they'll say it elevates the side effects.
Mm,
It gives relief from the symptoms and things like that. For which also we need evidence, but
yeah.
that evidence is not forthcoming.
Mm,
And homeopathy is the worst of them all.
mm,
Ayurveda is quite on its way behind it.
mm,
Yoga and naturopathy.
mm,
And things like Siddha. Siddha was banned actually
yeah. Oh.
because they're using heavy metals,
Mm,
salts of mercury, silver, and
mm.
lead, and things like that.
I think even Ayurveda has many concoctions that have heavy
Yeah,
metals.
heavy metals in them. And some of them are one way elements. For example, lead is a one way element. Once it goes and sits in your bones, you just can't take it out.
Mm,
It exchanges with the calcium and sits there. So, these are the sort of dangerous things people have to be careful about.
mm,
But people don't know. They say no side effects.
mm,
When sometimes there are no main effects at all.
mm,
Sometimes there are no main effects but only side effects.
mm,
And sometimes there aren't both. For example, in homeopathy,
mm.
there is neither a main effect nor a side effect.
Yep,
But
yep.
they are not as harmless as said to be. Because one could always neglect.
My biggest point against them is that sometimes people think they're legitimate and they treat themselves using those alternative treatments
Yeah.
in the place of real treatments, and eventually when they come to the real treatment, it's too late to.
Sometimes it's too late. For example, a malignancy which was treatable at an early stage comes to a stage where, fourth stage, where there are metastases all over and there is nothing anyone can do at that stage. If it was maybe treated in the first stage, there was a chance of survival for a much longer time. And sometimes out of the false confidence also they get into trouble. For example, during COVID times, Bajaj factory, they gave some so-called prophylactics for COVID. And so many people contracted COVID and died.
What kind of medicine was this?
Homeopathic something. Some arsenicum album or something like that.
So this interesting thing, in fact, I discussed about this with an ex-homeopath in my last podcast also. What he said was arsenicum album was marketed as a prophylactic. But later, when there were lots of protests against that idea, that concept itself, they started marketing it as an immune booster, which is completely different from prophylactic. So if someone eats arsenicum album and it goes in their body, how is it going to figure out, am I supposed to be a prophylactic or immune booster?
It's not going to do anything at all. Forget that. And if you take the protocol of AYUSH as a preventive treatment as well as post-recovery, all three are the same. Yoga, pranayama, chavanprash, arsenicum album, and all those, whatever junk that they prescribe is the same for all the three. So if something cannot prevent, it can cure. And if it cannot cure, it can help in your recovery. So same things. Just imagine this.
Yeah. The whole Ayush ministry is riding on the sentiments of people who believe in these traditional forms.
They're belief systems.
Yeah.
They're not science. They're just belief system. There is no evidence for any of the things in Ayush.
Yeah.
Absolutely no evidence at all.
And people fail to recognize that it's just a body for promotion.
These people also call themselves doctors. They put a stent around their neck. They also write diagnostic tests. They have absolutely no business to do all that. They are not supposed to auscultate because they treat the whole body. They are not just treating the cardiovascular system.
And the thing about Ayush is that people think, hey, there's no cost. It's not harming anyone. But the fact is,
it's not so. It's more expensive than something that cures.
The cost comes at the cost of public health.
No, not only that. The medicines as such are very, very expensive. Very, very expensive. For example, something like those Shakti drops, the same stupid concoction, costs some 200 rupees for 10 ml. A few drops of it. And that is supposed to be immune booster. Chavanprash, what is it? Gooseberry preserve. That is sold for some 500 rupees a kilo.
And people somehow blindly trust Ayurveda, but if anything is modern medicine, it's chemical, all these things. Everything is a chemical.
Yeah, everything is a chemical, including H2O, C6H12O6. Everything is a chemical.
So now one person who's been a big name in the promotion of alternative medicines is Dr. B.M. Hegde. Although I don't call him doctor anymore after the kind of harm he has done to public health. He's also from Bangalore. Have you ever, in any event?
I've contradicted him in public so many times, including in staff meetings. He was the dean of the institution where I was working. I would question him in staff meetings also openly. So I'll tell you one significant event that happened. I think it was around 25 years back. There was a quacks asthma relief camp. And this was
what? Quacks?
Asthma relief camp. He was
called quacks?
No, one quack was conducting an asthma relief camp. His name was some Dr. K. Shetty. He was a tailor's assistant, become doctor. Because for these quacks, their previous life does not matter. Once they become doctor, they become doctors. That he had an asthma relief camp at Mangalore Town Hall. Of course, these quacks do their quackery. And I had complained to drugs department about him, and they have raided him and all that. That's a different story. But let me be specific to what happened with this man. The quacks camp was being inaugurated by none less than Dr. B.M. Hegde. I think it was in 1991 or so. and I was the assistant professor and he was the dean. So anyway, I was assistant professor who was removed from the teaching post, and that was under litigation at that time. Of course, that removal was struck down. So I was never anything else. I was always a teacher only. So that is another story that we'll not talk about now. But this man was inaugurating that asthma relief camp. So I wanted to tell him that. So when I went to tell him that, that man as head of the institution should be always available on a 1:1 basis for his colleagues. But it never used to be so. There used to be people surrounding him, particularly outsiders. At least our colleagues we don't mind, but outsiders used to be sitting. I wanted to tell him, don't do that. So when I went in, this man is sitting with so many people. I said, sir, I want to tell you something. He said, tell. I said, something personal. He said, no, what personal? Tell. I said, no, I'll tell you later, and worked out. Then I tried to reach him through an associate dean who was a close friend of mine. I said, tell him, sir, not to do this. He said, you know him. So I thought I'll teach him a lesson. So I gave a press statement saying that the credentials of the quack manufacturing the nostrum as an asthma relief are known, that he was a tailor's assistant and all that. But those of the person inaugurating the camp are impeccable, because it's inaugurated being no less a person than Dr. B.M. Hegde, MD, MRCP, blah, 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 blah. And I wrote to the IMA. First of all, I called the top people. They said, Narendra, you know what this man is. Then I thought I'll put it in writing. And I told the head of the anti-quackery cell of IMA, Dakshina Kannada branch, what is this nonsense happening? He said, yeah, we know. I said, what will you do about it? I said, let somebody complain in writing. We'll tell you what we'll do. I said, I'm going to complain in writing. So I asked 3 questions. Has a new medicine for asthma been discovered? So far unknown. 2. If your member goes and inaugurates such an asthma relief camp, does it amount to professional misconduct? 3. What action do you propose to take? For which they said, first thing, no. Second, they said yes. And third, they said, we'll intimate you of the action taken. They issued a notice to this man, IMA.
Okay.
And IMA, when they issued a notice, he said, I'm not your member. And he wriggled out of it. Because IMA is not it's a association. It's not a statutory body. So that's how he wriggled out of it. And later on he told me, you tried to get my license removed. I said, I didn't try to get your license removed. Perhaps I would have succeeded if I tried it. Because what you are doing is nonsense. You're promoting a quack. I told him on his face. I don't care a damn. Even today I'll tell him on his face. And the head of the anti-quackery cell was Dr. K.R. Shetty, one of the senior most physician and a very upright person.
What do you think are the motivations for people like B.M. Hegde who are scientifically qualified but promote pseudoscience?
Desire for fame. The physician, there are 1,000 physicians. But as a physician promoting quackery, you are only one. Like Deepak Chopra. Deepak Chopra writes nonsense about Ayurveda. He even wrote nonsense about midbrain activation, saying that children can see with blindfolded. And I have complained to the American Medical Association about him recently, about 2 months back. I do not know whether they'll take any action. I'm just waiting to see.
So you have gone all over the country and even outside. You've done talks and demonstrations in many countries also. What do you think? What have you seen as a difference between the kind of superstitions people tend to believe within India and outside India?
If you take places like Nepal and Sri Lanka, they're the same as us.
Okay.
Not very different. But when you go abroad, when you see the Indians there, you see the same nonsense happening here, happening there also. Even though they are thousands of miles away, still they feel that some black magic from here will work on them also. You have the caste system also. there you have the horoscopes, you have the astrology. But what has happened there is the younger generation is no longer bothered about all this. They are born and brought up there. They've eaten the beef there. They've eaten the pork there, and they're not bothered about what is happening. So the older generation is gradually fading away, and the younger generation is integrated with the populations there. So you see, sometimes they're given a story of the exotic East, where there are yogis with this power and holy cows and things like that. And I think the gullible ones believe there, not the others, because the percentage of atheists is growing everywhere. We are the third largest group on this earth now.
Yep. Not religious. So, do you think the society in India will reach something like that at some point in the future?
Hope so. I hope so. That's why I'm still working for it. Otherwise, I would have called it a day. At the age of 73, still going around doing these things means that I hope that there will be a change.
Sir, that's all the questions I had. Is there anything you would like to talk about?
Nothing. Because if I keep on talking, I'll keep on talking. I'll go on talking because my whole lifestyle is based on rational choices and rational decisions as well as actions. So I think that should be an example to anybody who claims that one cannot live like that. In fact, not a single religious ceremony has been performed on me. And I have not performed any religious ceremony so far. Even in delicate situations like death of a parent, I have done nothing. Absolutely nothing at all. My marriage was under the Special Marriages Act. I have not let religion put a step into my life so far. Or taken part in any religious ceremony consciously. Even when I do not have biological children, but I've got two daughters whom I've inherited from my sister-in-law. They have no parents. Even for one of the younger of those daughters said, you should give me away in Kanyadan. She has no parents. I said, no. I said, you're not a cow to be given in dan to someone. No. Ask some relative from your father's side to do that. I'll attend your marriage, but I'll definitely not take any active part. Of course, that never happened because she got married under Special Marriages Act only. So I'll never do that.
That's it for the interview, sir. Fist bump.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. See you. Hope everyone enjoyed watching that podcast as much as I enjoyed taking that interview. I've also recorded some bonus clips with Narendra Nayak sir, and you can find them on the second channel linked below in the description. I'd just like to remind everyone that this content is entirely produced through direct support from my audience. This is also my main source of living. If you'd like to support me, you can do so through Patreon or YouTube memberships like these wonderful people, or through Buy Me Coffee UPI, website, merch. All the links are down below. Remember, your support is what helps me go all over the country and bring you interviews and discussions and content like this with a lot of experts. I'll see you in the next one. Till then, remember, science is dope.